this reading. Okay, so welcome everyone to Friday Floricanto. Also want to give a big shout out to Briana, who I believe is here now, and so she's the one who set all of this up. So I just want to say big thank you to her, and I appreciate her for bringing these poets together for this really wonderful poetry reading that we're going to have right now. So our first reader of the night is going to be Alan Chazaro, who is the author of This Is Not a Frank Ocean cover album, which is a great title, by the way, Piñata Theory, also a good title, and Notes from the Eastern Span of the Bay Bridge. He's a graduate of June Jordan's Poetry for the People program at UC Berkeley and a former Lawrence Ferlinghetti Fellow at the University of San Francisco. He writes for SF Gate, KQED, Oakland Side, 48 Hills, and other publications, and is on Twitter and IG, being a useless patromillennial at I'll throw the link in the chat, and you can purchase his book, and I'll throw all the links in the chat about how to connect with Alan during his reading. So Alan, go ahead.
Thank you, Karo, Hiram, Briana, everybody who put this together, César, Lisbeth, great to be reading with you all and opening it up tonight. I mentioned before people were getting in that I broke my foot just 3 days ago playing basketball. So I have my crutches over here, my boot over there. I'm super immobile right now, and I'm just like a mess physically, but spiritually I'm present and happy to be here and hoping that, you know, poetry can help heal my bone. So I've been thinking a lot about the body and mobility for obvious reasons. So I'm going to read a few poems that I think kind of gravitate around that energy for me. So the first poem, this is from Piñata Theory, by the way, from Black Lawrence. The artist is Francisco Palomares from East LA. This painting that he gave to our book was the size of a bedroom wall. So it's pretty dope. I recommend checking him out. He actually has an exhibit right now. I'm in the Bay, so I'm like, if you're in LA, you should check him out. They have a piñata exhibit going on. I forget where it is, but if you type in Francisco Palomares piñata exhibit, it's happening right now in Los Angeles, and I wish I could go, but I probably won't be able to make it. So this is backyard boxing. After school, we'd slip into the back and swing our skinny, weak haymakers we thought would make us grown men. I wondered if we'd ever get sleepy from knocking ourselves around empty fields, if we needed gloves to shield or break us from each other. One afternoon, I refused to fight. Emilio's punches popping my ribs and jaw. My arms fell mute until the crowd lost interest. Hit him back, they told me, as if my body had forgotten how to hurt. It's a short little poem, but I grew up in a house of all men. I like to share that at poetry readings because I don't think it's very common for Mexican families to not have the mother or any female presence whatsoever in the house. So I grew up in an all-male environment my whole life. So there was a lot of boxing, a lot of basketball, a lot of football, a lot of BB guns, a lot of all that stuff, smoking, video games, cutting class. So I try to really write about that experience in my poetry because I didn't really read that poetry growing up. So I want to make sure that young dudes like that can find something in here. So this next poem is called Ode to Kendrick Lamar. There are nights like tonight when it rains biblical amounts of everything and music plays while I drive somewhere I usually don't go after dark because I get lost in my head while my wife plans for next week. And I try to decide where to park and when to leave, but instead I down IPAs and smash In-N-Out burgers into my gut before the smallest words crawl out, forced. Some days I feel the dark rushing, a tidal wave of fuck yous cresting my insides. I double knot my Nikes and avert eye contact in a hoodie and baseball cap. I am not this facade, have never sailed a fist into a stranger's skull, but there is a thunderstorm coming and I must know my way. Tomorrow, I'll drive a pickup to the end of the road on the other side of Highway 880. I'll park and read poetry while 18-wheelers rumble within inches of my chest. It's what excites and repels my attention while riding this neighborhood. How the blood of sweetgrass reminds me of something else. Shout out Kendrick, one of the greatest artists, performers, poets of my generation, at least. He dropped an album called Untitled Unmastered, I don't know, 6 years ago, I think. It was a super small project. And it was this really cool thing because he took a bunch of songs that didn't make his previous album, To Pimp a Butterfly, and he took 5 or 6, maybe 7 or 8 even tracks from that didn't make the final cut, and he just threw them onto this other side album. It was really an EP, a small project. And that really inspired me as an artist to just kind of let your art live without having to, it's called Untitled Unmastered. I just really love that concept of like unmastering your art form and just letting it exist in the world. This next poem is called These Hours Are So Colored and Wasteful. We all carry certain amounts of piñata inside us, stringed to whatever tiny or giant truths we've tied ourselves to. Nowadays, there's so much dangling that I've forgotten the vowels crutched inside my mouth. A question. What would you say if I were California's redwoods and you were the morning frost clinging my branches? Explain the machinery of whale bones and the circuitry billowing our ribs. I want to believe that there is still electricity in my blood, that there is more to our days than these colored and wasteful hours being vultured. Give me what's next. The uncrossed canyon in your hands. Summon a perfect hit. I need to know, would you rather crawl in your own thirst or feast through my starvation? It's a bit of a weirder one there, but like I honestly got rappers like Kendrick Lamar and Isaiah Rashad kind of gave me the confidence, I think, to allow the weirder sides of myself to emerge through my art and through my poetry and not feel like I always have to have a tangible, clear meaning in my writing and art. But this is a poem coming up that is very much more direct, I think. It's a very clear memory I had growing up, again, in an all-male home, and having men constantly come over from the neighboring homes because we were the house in the neighborhood, the apartment that didn't have a mom or a wife. So all the guys in the neighborhood, like the immigrant dudes, would come kick it at our house and watch sports on our TV when I was a kid. And I just kind of see that a lot. So this poem is called Julio Cesar Chavez versus Oscar de la Hoya in 1996. That night, our apartment was an armpit, testosterone and sweat washed, as if Papi and his friends were the ones entering the ring. When he let me sip his Heineken, I knew it was a big deal. I stumbled and hiccuped, imitating Dumbo from the Disney movie I loved. The men laughed, easily entertained, until Chavez appeared on screen. The Mexican warrior, they called him. Papi reminded me how he had battled 100 fighters, more than Ali or Tyson or Dempsey. Then De La Hoya entered. Everyone booed, telling him to go back to his locker like the traitor he was. The Mexicans thought he was gringo, and the gringos thought he was Mexican. I should have smiled with missing front teeth for the golden boy in his mixed up outfit, a combination of US and Mexican flags, but I didn't. I don't remember the actual fight, a flurry of blurred punches and card girls in bikinis. I wasn't sure what took place until everyone started grumbling, their movements a beer-confused disappointment. One man even cried. Chavez was hunched over in his corner, right eye swollen from repeated jabs to the brow, while De La Hoya stood center, undefeated. I actually went back and rewatched that fight on YouTube because we can do stuff like that now when I was writing this poem. But I remember watching it live with my dad was into boxing. So I kind of grew up in that environment. And just the energy of if you all remember, Julio Cesar Chavez is like the most notorious, revered Mexican boxer of all time. And in the 90s, you had De La Hoya came out of nowhere from LA and was like this Mexican American guy. So my dad was Mexican, right? And all his friends were Mexican, like born in Mexico. When I say Mexican, not like me, born here in the States. So I kind of remember how much they kind of like talked trash about De La Hoya because he wasn't a real Mexican. And it was just something that I felt so used to growing up as a pocho myself, where you constantly get questioned for your validity of existence, no matter what side of the border you're on, it seems. So I kind of identified with De La Hoya, or not, yeah, De La Hoya wore Mexican and US flags on both sides of his shorts. And I just thought it was a cool symbol as I've grown older. I'll end with this poem here. It's the title poem of Piñata Theory. Blindfolded, I was given a broomstick and told to hit a moving target. When I swung my dizzy arms, an adult on a chair would pull on a rope to yank the rainbow fluff of goods beyond my reach. Everyone laughed and sang about hitting the cardboard carcass, but I only became more lost. To prove them all wrong, I focused harder in the darkness. Consider the violence of living, how breath can be fractured and displaced while walking. Take bones, for example, how they are firm enough for everyday activity, but collapse on impact. Sorry, I have to like just laugh at that because that literally happened to me the other day and I was like, I fear these injuries, knowing what's beneath revelations. Each day is a split in the skull, a bang in the lungs. If I am piñata, then hang me with strings of coriander and rainbow dust while playing retro surf music and popping party balloons until I'm spilling myself and you are reaching to gather whatever part of me is unbroken. Because tonight is a cliffside. Everyone is loose and dismembering something might bring us together. We went from smashing little Spider-Mans to smashing institutions we can't see, getting our spins and tumbles from tequila and coronas, pretending to be ourselves but never trusting the brakes, a different kind of broken, a slower waking up, each morning becoming more monster, needing a harder sort of destruction. And this glue was never meant to hold us together. We were covered in layers of pretty colors, paper mache faces, superhero assemblages of warehouse scraps. Beneath this RoboCop exterior, we stomach lollipops, our breakage, a celebration. The truth, we were made for beat downs. Thank you. Excited to hear the next readers and appreciate you all being present on a Friday evening. Much love from the Bay to LA.
From LA to the Bay. Thank you, Alan. That was, wow, that was really, really wonderful. I just want to invite everyone, if you want to unmute yourself and just give a, a round of applause, some cheers for Alan.
Woo! Incredible.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, this is the first time that I heard you read, Alan, and that was really beautiful. All those lines and those images, yeah, they were totally blew my mind. I was like trying to type some of them out in the chat, but then I was like, then the next line came and I was like, whoa. And so, but yeah, so thank you so much, Alan. And I dropped the links for Alan's books into the chat. I'll drop them in again. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next poet of the night, César. I'm gonna go ahead and read his bio. César L de León is the author of Speaking with Grackles by Soapberry Trees. He's a poet organizer for Poets Against Walls, and his poetry has been published in various anthologies and journals. César is a Golden Circle Award recipient from the University of Columbia Press, and he holds an MFA in creative writing with a certificate in Mexican American Studies from the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. So go ahead and take us away. Thank you so much for joining us today, César.
Thank you for that lovely intro. I was like, I'm going to copy that down. That's like really simple and straight to the point. I love it. Well, thank you everybody for being here with us. Thank you everybody from the Sims Library for putting this together and for inviting. I am deeply honored and humbled to be here sharing my work. So I'll be sharing tonight from my first book, my debut collection, Speaking with Grackles by Soapberry Trees, by FlowerSong Press, which is interesting because it ties in with Floricanto, Friday Floricanto, right? FlowerSong, Love y Canto. This little collection kind of spans a lifetime. So there's some older poems in here. There are some newer poems, and they kind of start off with childhood experiences, childhood memories, adolescent memories, and goes on to current events. So that's kind of the path that the book takes us through, or at least I hope it takes you through that path. So I will be reading a bit from kind of like each section, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so first of all, before I read this one, do y'all know what loteria is, or Mexican loteria? The little, it's become kind of popular because everybody's kind of redoing their own loteria cards. So this one is titled El Mundo, after the loteria card. From an early age, I was told flowers and florals were for girls. I liked them anyway. My eyes secretly tracing roses, hyacinths, sunflowers, blooming on mama's blouses, abuela's skirts. When we played loteria, I was expected to like La Sirena. The roundness of breast rendered on cardboard should have lured me into the depths of manhood. I liked El Mundo instead. His chest wide, his back ample, the world balancing on the mounds of his shoulders, the authority of his thighs governing my gaze. When I played outside, I was taught Birds were supposed to be shot with a slingshot, a rock, or a BB gun. I prefer to watch them hop from branch to branch, hoping they would turn to me and say, "We know you, Florecita. We know you." Thank you. So this is another list of sort of taking me back and forth through growing up. And you might hear the town of Harlingen, which is where I grew up here in South Texas, being mentioned several times. So just an FYI, just a little geographical note. Learning to swim. I am 5. Grandpa buys me a yellow raincoat like the ones white kids in television wear, so I don't get wet walking to school. It's itchy, hot, and smells like a rubber glove, and I have no choice but to wear it. I am 33. I blame alcohol and myself for my boyfriend's hands around my throat after leaving Juan's party early because I had a fever. He does it because he loves me, I tell myself before I pass out. I am 8. I fractured my tibia in the playground of Primera Iglesia Bautista of Harlingen after being told not to play outside because sleet had made everything slippery. My leg is bound tight in Dad's old shirts. When we get home, there's no money for doctors or hospitals. I am 21. I hear a woman holler by the canal behind Crockett Elementary. Maybe it's just Aunt Chana looking for her cats. Maybe it's La Llorona coming to take me for touching Charlie's penis when we were 10. I am 13. I pray for Grandma to wake from her coma. It is the last time I pray. I am 17. I develop a crush on Navy recruiter Rios, who comes to the house every Saturday of April. He brings brochures and success stories of other barrio guys who joined the ranks and now own houses and drive brand new cars after 4 years of traveling the world after high school. I am 7. Mama, sister, brother, and I hide in the closet during a lightning storm that downs a mesquite in the neighbor's yard. I am 12. I stoned the one-eyed grackle pecking at the figs on Grandma's tree. She loves figs and birds, and I never tell her what I did. I am 41. Mother sobs against my chest and asks if she's been a bad mother. I am 35. I almost drowned, pulling my brother out from the deep end of the pool. We are learning to swim. I am 37. I visit the border wall in Hidalgo, Texas, 15 miles from my apartment, as if it is a tourist attraction in another country. Its rusty beams trace an aura of blood in the sky. I can smell and taste the iron when I close my eyes at night. I am 46. I forgive myself for crying like a child every time I hear the finale of Stravinsky's Firebird. Gracias. So I'm trying to pick, my poems most of them are a little short. So I'm trying to pick some of the ones that are a little bit more narrative driven, a little bit of more storytelling. Mother never talks about death. She talks of disease instead, over coffee and sweetbread. Your Aunt Juana lost a foot to diabetes. The neighbor from across the street has stomach cancer. Sister Garza from church gets epileptic seizures. She pours me a cup and tells me about herself. Maybe I have diabetes also. I like pan dulce too much. They will cut off my legs. I'm losing weight. What if the last time I got blood drawn, they gave me AIDS? I think I have cancer. My nails are brittle. My hair is thinning. Look, mira. I see it. Not any disease, but how she walks slower than last year from the stove to the table. How each bite of bread she takes is measured. How time has settled on her shoulders like a favorite coat. ¿Más café? ¿Pan? She asks. El café es bueno. It cleans your sangre and your kidneys so you don't get stones. No, don't eat too much bread. You're going to get diabetes like Juana. I smile and swallow. The aches in my bones, the night sweats, the blood tests, the corpse weight of waiting. Gracias. This other one I think might be in conversation with some of Alan's poetry, because growing up a queer Mexican kid, sometimes those overly masculine spaces were a little too much. So this is kind of about that. How to play it safe at a Texas barbecue, a Joto's guide. 1, try to blend in. 2, don't be a Joto. 3, don't wear your Madonna or Janet concert tee. Selena, may she rest in peace, may pass, but don't risk it. 4, shorts must be below the knee unless you're white or have money. 5, if it's BYOB, stick with beer. Nothing imported unless it's Dos Equis or Corona. Nothing from my microbrewery, and never ever wine or sangria. Although I think microbreweries are okay now with most dudes, with most bro dudes. 6, don't drink too much. You'll need your full control of your senses. 7, if it's a potluck barbecue, leave the hummus at home. Canned salsa is acceptable. Guacamole is perfect. 8, keep your hands in your pockets. Don't let them do the talking. If they must come out, grab your crotch occasionally. 9, spit off to the side or between your feet occasionally. 9.1, advanced technique. Grab your crotch and spit off to the side at the same time if you can, de vez en cuando. It might take some practice. 10, be prepared to be uncomfortable. 11, be ready to hear all about pussy and tetas and maybe ass. Women can't live with them and can't live without them, right? Pinches viejas. 12, don't be shy about exaggerating the size of your piece. It's a power pole, a giant anaconda, a mighty sequoia, the axis of the universe. 12, don't be shy about pissing outside behind a bush or on the side of the house or the fence. Remember how mighty your meat is and don't hide it too much. It's only guys anyway. 13, accept the sample piece of carne straight off the grill. 14, wipe your hands on your pants or your shorts that go past your knees. 15, when they bring out the guns to show off, be the first to want to touch. Ask if you can shoot it. Imagine yourself Clint Eastwood or 007 or any dude in a Quentin Tarantino film. 16, don't say film. 17, don't be fooled by the metrosexuals. Their manicured hands don't mean they won't punch. 18, watch out for those touchy-feely drunks. 19, don't stare too long, even if they stare back. There's usually one that will grab your ass or rub his crotch against you, maybe even take your hand and put it on his junk. In a fun, joking way, of course. 20, don't grab back at anything. This could go wrong real quick. Safety first. 21, don't fall in love. 22, leave early if you can. And 23, don't fall in love. Gracias. Do you have time for one more?
Yeah, just like maybe like a shorter one. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I will end it with the last poem of the collection, which is sort of appropriate because we're coming up on Halloween and Dia de los Muertos. Sugar Skull. I am that sugar skull you buy. Chalk outlined in the aftermath of blue against brown, ebony, red-throated, like hummingbird sheen peeled off in ribbons, tied around the blind spot under your golden corn silk hair. I am that sugar skull you decorate, sterilized by cloudless dog days, dried and polished by river-flavored Santa Ana sandstorms, thirsting and pressed against concrete walls, asphalt, iron bars, restless inside Target and Walmart sacks, half buried outside Falfurrias, Texas. You offer a Eucharist of ashes. Call me a martyr. Proclaim yourself witness at the edge of town, my face on your child's face, painted by number. I am that sugar skull you proudly display on Halloween, devoid of exit wounds and pesticide-scented hair. Don't you recognize me, America? Gracias.
Thank you, César. If folks want to unmute themselves and show some love, let's do it. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and your like tender storytelling and just sharing all that with us. And I think as Lisbeth said in the chat, it's so sad and funny at the same time. There was like moments where I was like, oh my heart, and then there was moments where I was smiling, and it was really really beautiful. And as Hiram pointed out in the chat, this is really incredible. We have 3 poets from 3 different cities. And they're all here sharing poetry, and it's really really incredible. So again, Briana, thank you so much for putting this all together, because really I'm just kind of here. So Briana did the work, and the poets here, and so I'm just really blessed to be here and hearing everybody. And then also just to let you know, we'll probably have a couple minutes left over at the end to do a short Q&A. So if you have any questions for these poets, save them till the end, and then we can you can do a short little discussion. And then also just one last thing, I just really want to encourage everyone to click those links that I've been throwing in the chat, and buy these poets' works. Like they're reading here for you, and poets. A lot of the labor that we do as poets isn't paid, and so one way that we can support one another is to buy our book. So I encourage everybody to to buy a book tonight. And with the pandemic, it's harder because you're not selling them in person, and but we got to support each other even virtually. So okay, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our last poet for the night, Lisbeth Coiman, who I was just at her book release. I think this was like last week. She just came out with she has a lot of books, but she just came out with Uprising. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and read her bio. Lisbeth Coiman is a poet and educator from Venezuela. Her debut book, I Asked the Blue Heron, a memoir, explores the intersection between immigration and mental health. Her poetry collection, Uprising, Alzamiento, will be released in the fall of 2021. Coiman lives in Los Angeles, California. So Lisbeth, go ahead, the mic is yours.
El Guaire. You'll drink water from El Guaire. Hugo Chavez Frias, 2006. Before born, a pristine future streamed down from El Avila tributaries into El Guaire. Families lounged on its shores, boats sailing southeast pastoral landscape of a small unbarreled city. Pride for the first constant source of energy in the subcontinent. Unplanned growth and expansion of 167 square mile city lacking sanitation. Applause for canals draining sewage into the river, prone to flooding, the beginning of entropy, turned to gestures of disgust. Oil boom of the 70s, Caraqueños covered hills, asphyxiating crowd, and stagnated traffic. El Guaire converted into a torrent of human and industrial waste. Late Jurassic rocks, only reminders of the river's splendor. Who needed clean water? Oil revenues, a constant flow down the street, infrastructure projects celebrated with cocktails of corrupt allocations and nepotism. He who drank the blood of tigers in the gardens of the presidential palace to secure a passage into eternity, promised to clean the sewage, return it to its pristine past, and the Red Seals clap. Vulnerable protesters jumped into El Guaire to escape tear gas. The promise has been delivered. People are bathing in the Guaire. On social media, the only reliable news from my dystopian homeland, El Guaire miners go underwater to recover discarded metals to trade for food. Hundreds of citizens slide down the sewage, carrying plastic containers to quench their thirst with the waste of a country gone awry. This poem, I hope, is a symbol of the decadence and destruction of my country, which started many years ago, but was catalyzed by the last 20 years regime. And it was born in the workshop by Xochitl Yulisa Bermejo and was workshopped at the Anansi Writers Workshop several times, where I carefully heard the suggestions of my peers. Rhabdomyolysis, June 30th, 2019. Electrocution of the human body pillages the space of oxygen in the bloodstream, mashes muscle fiber, causes kidney failure. Rafaela Costa Arevalo, in a wheelchair, head hung forward before a judge, only 8 healthy ribs sustained his mangled torso long enough for him to whisper a plea, auxilio, barely audible to his lawyer. Witnesses in the courtroom did not stand up to block the henchmen taking him away. People did not run to the streets to save him. A day later, 1 hour for each of his heroic ribs, which suspended his voice, the slash entered his brain. Acosta Arevalo died of torture. a voice in the dark. I will not remember the silence of those who left me alone. I will remember the voices that held my hand in the dark and whispered, I'm here with you. Much has been said about the events happening in Venezuela. Some criticize them as an orchestrated CIA coup d'etat, but in the reality, is this the uprising of my people for 20 years looking for freedom. And this is my definition of uprising. Uprising. It is a noun, a revolt, an insurrection. It is a verb, to stand up and rise, to rise into view. One, a human river floods Avenida Bolívar and Avenida Libertador. Pubescent bodies shake behind makeshift shields and masks fashioned from plastic bottles and rags. A violinist and a ballerina perform in front of the armored vehicle. After the musician is captured, his face is rendered unrecognizable. A young woman offers a flower to the riot police while the stolid abuela stands in the way of a moving truck. Emaciated souls march single file through the Andes border, crossing rivers swelling with the descent and desertion. 3, on an improvised stage, an unquavering young man swears to protect the Constitution. Hope stands up defiant and takes the oath in front of his peers. Voices rise to describe dystopia in 100-second languages. Keyboard warriors tweet the sorrow of a woman carrying the limp body of her teenage daughter. Bloggers comment on seniors lining up for a ration of rice with added bugs for protein. Journalists report of nocturnal dances around currency bonfires. And this resandera wrestles with the oxymoron of an oil-rich country without gasoline. Spring meets the silhouette of 2 men, courage marked by chain bracelets around their wrists. Eyes hold the images of darkness, torture, isolation. Eyes retreat to see the bright future of a nation slowly climbing the upward slope to freedom. How much long do I have? I lost track.
You've got like another like 5 minutes. If you wanted to do the Q&A, we have about like 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to read one poem that is very enthusiastic. De Mujer a Mujer was the first poem of this collection that got published. And it got published directly for the workshop where I took it for the first time. I think Angela Frankel in the audience saw it for the first time. De Mujer a Mujer, to Venezuela. Mujer, I talk to you without hair on my tongue, without a drawer inside hiding unspoken truth. Here's a mojito. Take a sip. Young, attractive, educated, and fucking rich, you are anything but naive. You have fallen into every trap. First, they hit on you, wrap around their pinky fingers, and as soon as you spread your legs, they beat you, kidnap you, rape you, enslave you, starve you, not to enjoy your body, mind you. You're hot. All they want is to live on your back, fucking pimps, fanning their testicles, dilapidating their infinite wealth, your infinite wealth. Is that mojito strong enough? Easy, mujer. I want you alert, not drunk. Es que me echó tierrita en los ojos. Yeah, right. See where his sweet talk took you. You've become a beggar in rags, eating from the garbage trunk, stretching right and left, looking for a handout to feed your brood. Es que no puedo ver tanto niño muriendo de hambre. Look at the pimp who said he'll defend you while waving his friend's flags, not yours. Look at his watch, his private jet, his feasts for kings. Where do you think that comes from? Door-to-door sales of Avon products? Es que su verdadera cara está escondida detrás de una bandera caduca. Every time a new jack shows up at your door, warming up your ears, you'll fall for the same old trick and offer him your botija. With the slumber still heavy on your eyelids, you sit at a low table in the park to learn to play chess. Onlookers stop to pay attention to your moves. And from the sidewalk, I scream to you, my queen, stop being such a pendeja. Get your children together and set yourself free. I think I ran out of time.
Oh, wait, we can we can do, do you want to do like one more?
One more. This I'm going to dedicate to Alan, because Alan, I grew up with men, and we did a lot of boxing on television and in person. We hit each other a lot, so don't mess up with me because I fought 5 brothers. But my sport is baseball. Winter ball, or what we call in Venezuela, caimaneras. In this field, the young men of my community learned the strategy of our beloved pastime. The pitcher fidgets with the red ridges, feels the smooth white leather yelled into his digits, communicates with the catcher, squatting behind whom he interprets the signals of the defense. A mixed breed of hitters, aggressive or patient, fill the bases while others sacrifice to advance peers from tree to tree. The outfielder, stealers take the second and an occasional third, like little, oh, das, chavista tenía que ser, ese es ladrón. The outfielder may see no action, fall asleep at the job, or catch the occasional home run with bare hands, closing the inning, keeping the feeling of that pounding ball in his hand for too long. In the next inning, a pull hitter sends a fly to La Vieja Periche's porch, perched like a hunting cat on her chair, quickly takes the ball and closes the door. No begging or protest is enough to warm her iced chest and return the ball. The game is postponed. When it resumes another hot afternoon, the score is kept in mind because now this is war. Frustrated, the opposing team promises to square the third base steal. The loser must take the chicken from La Vieja Periche yard for the sancocho that will be later cooked in the hills. A home runner with pigeon feet requires a designated runner to jump over the concrete walkways, touch the tree trunks, slide home short of a slamming head against curb. The scream out emerged from the soul, from the sidewalk, calls from a double play fill the air. Thick with the overpowering hum of the cicadas, what happens next in this field molds this generation. This is how the war ends, with the stars of the game. a long lineage of infielders, shortstop borns in the neighborhood, team players who coordinate, hustle, defend, even with deceit, if necessary. A once-bound throw ball to first or third for a spectacular triple play. He's out, game over. Let's steal that chicken and celebrate.
Oh, yes, Lisa, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all that. And then if everyone can unmute themselves, just give a big round of applause for Lisbeth and all the other poets. Woo! Woo!
Yeah.
Let's steal that chicken.
Yeah, Alyssa, that was really your poetry is so powerful and your delivery is so spot on. It's wonderful to always hear you read, and just, yeah, the stories that you tell are just so important because, you know, they're not stories that we always hear. And so I always feel like I'm learning something new from you, Lisbeth, so I appreciate that. And then again, you know, I'm going to drop Lisbeth's books in the chat again. Like I said earlier, you know, you got to click those links. And so we have a couple minutes left till 7. So does anyone here in this wonderful audience have a question for either of the 3 poets?
No question.
Am I allowed to ask one, or? Oh, sorry.
I have one.
Go ahead.
My question is, unfortunately, I came in late because I just found out about the event. But my question for Lisbeth is, how much research did you have to do to incorporate that into your poems for tonight? Well, your book collection, I should say.
Probably can we have the gallery view, please? Because I'm seeing myself on a little corner and a little picture of Angela. Okay. There were poems, the majority of my poems are based, I could say they are like a phrases, because my family and childhood friends send me images of what's happening there, the protests, the murders, the lines for ration, the lines for gasoline. And those images are mostly based at the base from which I draw for the poems. There were 2 particular poems that gave me a lot of work. When I took the El Guaire to the Anansi workshop, the suggestion from my peers, and it was a good night when I brought that poem there. It was fantastic. There were a lot of very good poets at that night. The suggestion was, tell us the history of the river. So I knew the river was once navigable. I knew a lot about how, but I wanted like how long exactly this tiny city, because I don't know if you know, Caracas is a tiny city. So it's 11 miles across. It's really tiny. It grows in the mountain and it has this river crossing in the middle, right? It's a tiny valley. So I needed to do a lot of research. When was it that we started putting the sewage in the river? And when was it that we canalized it? So there was a lot of research for that. Now, I grew up with baseball. And Venezuelans we are in the big league since the 40s, the 50s, but we are most known for our infielders. So I went and I researched the names of all our infielders, and we are dating back the 30s, the 20s, infielders from Venezuela doing great job in the Caribbean and in the big league. So, and I made it into an allegory of how to get this done, get rid of these people, you know, get the shortstops in the game. Those are the people who were able to coordinate this and take them out. things like that I had to research, but most of it is born from images that I actually saw on social media that my desperate friends and family were sending me. I mean, I saw pictures of a tiger, a head of a tiger, being eaten by rats because we can no longer keep the zoos. I saw images of a currency being burned down on the streets because the currency from one night to the other lost value. The lines looking for gasoline, people jumping into this horrific and stinky sewage with plastic containers to look for something liquid to satisfy some of their needs. So these images are real. These images are real. Now, the rhabdomyolysis, I had to read an autopsy report for that, because the guy was killed, and eventually the autopsy report came from Colombia, in a leak from Colombia, and I got hold of it and I read the entire thing, and had to stomach it to read that thing, and then put that into that very brief poem, you know, like 10 pages of minutiae bodily things, horrific bodily things to write that brief poem. So yeah, I don't think there is a lot of inspiration when you write, but you have to go and do some research, because you have to make sure that you're saying something that is historically accurate, that you're not putting one event before the other, that this didn't happen in this order. And I know this guy, Chavez, was a catalyst of the destruction of the country, and then he left in power this man that is a complete inept. But Chavez is also a product of a process that started 40, 60 years ago, a process of corruption and from which we all witnesses. And that's why, if anything, if nobody pays attention with this book to what's happening to my country, if anything, I want you to wake up to the reality of your country, and why is it so important not to put a demagogue in power. It doesn't matter what ideology that demagogue plays, right? The problem is the demagogue, not the ideology.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisbeth, for that answer. That was, yeah, you know, definitely a lot of research, you know, needs to be taken, and especially if you're writing these sort of like historical narrative poems. So thank you so much for Lisbeth for sharing that. And so, yeah, we're coming at the end of time. There was some questions in the chat that happened. So if you want to take a look at that, there's some good stuff in the chat happening too. But yeah, thank you so much everyone for coming to this reading. Thank you, Lisbeth and César and Alan, who had to go. And thank you again, Briana. And you know, thank you, Hiram, for making this in the Library of Poetry possible. And yeah, thank you, lovely audience, for being here and just, you know, being engaging in the chat. And yeah, so I hope everyone has a great night and a great weekend.
Thank
I'll
you
see you all
for
later.
inviting me. Thank you,
Bye.
Briana, for putting this show together. Thank you, Sims Library, for hosting. Thank you, Karo, for being the voice of the master of ceremony. And a pleasure to meet César, and a pleasure to meet Alan. And thank you to the rest of the audience for coming. Bye-bye.